You know, all this at the end will be worse, right? You know that, right? All the effort, all these nights take up place, all this fear. I can assure you.
Estamos negociando. Primero Oliver nos tiene que dar el sí.
No, pero David, tú no es que sí, pero o sea,
Y el partido todo iban portero con nosotros. Pero se le tiene que pedir permiso a que sea.
bueno, es que si hablas de poner medio.
Es que pide la.
Sí.
El equipo del préstamo, el equipo rival, en la liga medio.
Sí, es que si no se hizo medio.
Sí, voy a hacer. El sitio.
Okay, let's recap. What have we learned about this thing? What have we learned?
But there are two types.
Okay.
Financial
Or
operational. I think it's
operating, financial or capital, and operating or service. Lease agreement, okay? So there are two types, financial or capital lease agreement and operating or service lease agreement. What else have we learned about lease? What else have we learned? Mhm. And maybe the discount rate. For payments. Depends on, well, we can generalize, right? Remember? The discount rate for these payments is the what? Right? So if 100% of debt is displaced, then the discount rate is the cost of debt after tax, right?
Yes.
If 0% of debt is displaced, then the discount rate is the cost of debt. If something in between, then we have do you agree?
Yes.
So that's something we have to learn as well. What else?
Maybe the actions of the leasing and the different type. The difference of how the lease works when it's operational or financial.
You mean the cash flows?
Yeah.
Okay.
The cash flows and how we represent them on the book.
So probably we just mention here the most important differences for the capital, financial lease, or the operating.
The capital we can depreciate and we must.
Appreciation, tax shield, and implicit interest, tax shield. And what makes it different from the operating is that in the operating lease agreement, you can only deduct the lease payment, correct? Is that good?
Yes.
What else have we learned? How do we decide in the first place whether this agreement is financial or not?
It needs to cover one of the core characteristics of a financial lease.
Five criteria, right?
The order, I don't remember it, but I remember that one of them is that it is sold at the end between the 70% of market value and the target price between 70% of the market value or $1.
No?
Yes. Yeah.
So first assess the transfer of ownership. If it is transferred to the lessee before the maturity of the lease agreement, then it is financial. Second, if there is no transfer, we check if there is a bargain price. We should have at least 30% discount, right? From the market price at the time of the expiration of the lease agreement, right? We check if the term of the lease agreement is at least 75% of the useful life of the asset, or if the present value of the lease payment is at least 90% of the market value of the asset at the beginning of the lease agreement. So the market price applies to the market value at the end of the lease agreement, the present value of the payments to the market value at the beginning of the lease agreement. Okay?
Yes.
If at least one of that, so we just need one criterion to be met, right?
Yes.
Equals a financial lease agreement. Right? What else have we learned? How do we call this? How do you call this?
Mental math.
It's helpful. It only takes one page. It's a lot of knowledge with just one page. Try it. Sometimes it works. What else have we learned? I have learned some modern things. What?
When we decide a payment of option.
Okay. So for the valuation of the lease agreement, there are two approaches. Approaches. We review one, which is net present value. And today we're going to review the second one, which is called the equivalent one. Decision rule. We learned that one, right? There is a decision rule for approach 1. There is a decision rule for approach 2. I'm going to call this approach 1, approach 2. Okay. So for approach 1, what is the rule? When do we decide to lease?
If the net present value of the lease is lower than the net present value of buying.
Lower means more negative, right?
No, with lower, it's cheaper.
Oh, that sounds better. So what is most costly? 6 pesos or 5 pesos?
6 pesos.
So if this was lease and this was buy, which one should we choose?
Lease.
Why? Because
Cheaper.
it's cheaper. So if the net present value, because what we are going to estimate is net present value. So how do we know when it's cheaper?
It is positive.
It will never be positive, I'm afraid.
Bigger.
Then, well, the net present value of the lease will never be positive. The net present value of the incremental cash flow will be. The incremental net present value will be. Right? If the incremental net present value is greater than 0 or equal to 0, then we should, well, greater, because if it's equal, then any instance. If it's positive, then we should lease. Right? But if we only look at the present value of the lease and compare it to the net present value of the buy option, not the incremental, what is the rule?
The one that is bigger in terms of,
So we're gonna compare it with the net present value of the buy option, right?
yes,
So which one should be greater?
the lease. Yes,
Because it would be less negative, right? So what's greater, -5 or -6?
-5.
The net present value of the lease should be greater than the net present value of the buy option, or what is the same, the incremental net present value or the net present value of the incremental cash flow should be greater than 6. Then we should decide for the lease, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Today we will learn that for the second approach, if the equivalent loan if the equivalent loan is greater than the cash flow of the lease in year 0, we should buy on credit or buy. Because we just proved that buy on credit and buy on cash have exactly the same cash flow. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. That is the net cash flow in year 0. Net cash flow in year 0 for the lease agreement. Have we learned anything else? Because I still have some space here.
Teacher,
Yeah.
in the last one, the equivalent loan greater than two on the list, but this why in credit or why cash?
Doesn't matter. What's important is that, remember that cash flows are exactly the same. Whether you buy on cash or you buy on credit, the comparison with the lease is exactly the same. So you first decide to buy. In a second step, in a second stage, you decide whether you buy on credit or cash. And that will depend on something else apart from the lease, right? Anything else we would like to add to our map? Is that it? That's a good summary, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, probably. Bookkeeping? What do we do with the financial? What do we do with the operating?
These are not very needs.
Say it again, please.
If it is an operating
Mhm.
lease, it comes as an expense in the income statement.
Excellent. The lease payment is an expense.
Individual payments.
On the financial statement. And if it is financial, sorry?
Well, I that also the futures payments has to be in the balance sheet in the trading list for the future payments.
Person. Assuming capitalized. Assuming. Present value of future payments must be capitalized. What does that mean? What do we do?
Report what will be the present value of the future payments
Where?
in a note.
To the notes of what? Of what document?
Balance sheet.
In the balance. That's what capitalized means. Has to go to the balance sheet. Okay? And if it were financial, how do we register the lease agreement?
As an asset.
Correct. So capitalize the asset. So it means go to the balance sheet. Okay. And because if I add something on the assets, the balance sheet will be mismatched. So how do I keep the equilibrium? If I add it on the balance on the asset side,
And you have to subtract from the. It's
Also record in your liability, right?
from the liabilities.
and let's say we decide an agreement, a lease agreement is capital. So if it is a capital lease, I'm going to add a fixed asset, like before a copier, right?
Yes.
Fixed assets. So that is $3,500 more. Either I subtract something on the left-hand side, or I add something on the right-hand side, right? Otherwise, the balance will be lost. What should we do? We are leasing, okay? We are leasing. This is a lease agreement. We are not buying. But I am registering the asset as if it were mine, because according to the FAS criteria, it is a capital lease. I'm not buying it. I still have to do some lease payments. How do I rebalance my balance sheet?
Increasing the buildings.
That's right. The value of the lease should go on the right-hand side. It is a commitment. I still have to pay every rent every month. Okay? So that is capitalize the asset. So you register the asset, but the liability at the same time. Anything else? You depreciate the asset. You capitalize the asset, so you record the asset on the balance sheet, and then you can depreciate the asset every period. In the operating, you cannot do that. You only register an expense in the income statement, in the profit and loss statement. In the files I shared with you, I shared 3 files. One for the types of leases, one for the bookkeeping, and another for the valuation. So that tells you that in your mental map, you at least should include bookkeeping, types, and valuation. So we were missing this one. It's complete already. Sounds good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Questions? This is just a summary of one of the topics you have learned in corporate finance, just one. Imagine if we had built a mental map for every single topic, every content we review. You would have your notebook full of mental maps of all the things you have learned. Right?
Yes.
Good. So let's have a look at this equivalent note. So another way we can value the lease agreement and decide whether it is preferable to the buy option or not is to estimate something that is called equivalent note. So it's something equivalent, so it does not exist, okay? It is a calculation we will make so that we can compare it with something. What is an equivalent loan? So in the valuation, we come up with the cash flows of the lease agreement, right? And if you remember, the present value of the lease agreement was negative in the example we were doing about the photocopier. It was also negative for the buy option. So the fact that the present value is negative means we only have costs, or costs are larger than inflows, right? So that means that I am having expenses every period. If I didn't disburse that amount of money and pay it to the lessor, but pay it to a bank, the money I am spending, okay? In the lease agreement, I paid to the lessor. Oh, that's something we are missing here, right? Counterparties. Two, right? Lessee, lessor. Lessee is the one that rents, pays the rent. And lessor is the one that charges for the asset, right? Is usually the owner of the asset. Right? So I can pay the lessor, or I could pay a bank. If I pay the lessor, it's because I am leasing the asset, the photocopier. But if the money I am spending goes to the bank, most likely it's because I asked for a loan. Okay? What if the money I gave to the lessor gave it to the bank? I could ask myself, for this amount of money I am paying every month to the lessor, how much money could the bank lend me? That amount of money is the equivalent loan. Oh, let's move it again. You clear what I said? So I calculate, because I need to anyway, the cash flows for the lease agreement. After I do those calculations, I know how much money I am paying the lessor every month in net terms, so the net cash flow. If instead of paying the lessor, I paid the bank could lend me money in exchange. Do you agree? I could borrow money from the bank could write out a loan for me. So how large could that loan be? It depends on how much money I am paying the bank, right? Do you agree on that? If I pay 5,000 pesos a month, probably the bank can lend me, I don't know, 50,000 pesos. But if I pay 7,000, maybe I can get 60,000. If I pay 18,000 a month, maybe I can get 1 million pesos. Okay. So the more I pay, the more the larger the loan may be. Okay. So that amount of money is the equivalent loan. Is the amount of money that an institution, bank, could lend me, okay? If instead of spending money and pay to the lessor to lease or rent an asset, I pay the bank to buy the asset and own it at the end. Because the difference between the lease and the buy is that in the lease, if it is financial and I have the bargain option, I could get it at the end. But in the buy option, I am always the owner. That's for sure. Okay, in the lease agreement, it's optional, may have a requirement, a bargain price at the end or a purchase price. But in the buy option through a credit, I become the owner immediately. Well, not immediately because there is a liability in the invoice, but I will become, okay? Legally speaking, I am the owner. And accounting speaking, I am the owner. All right? So how much money can the bank lend me if with the cash flows I have for the lease agreement, I use them and pay the bank a credit? If the amount of money that the bank can lend me is greater than the amount of money the lease agreement saves me, I should rather buy on credit and ask the loan and buy the asset. Make sense?
Yes.
If I am paying 5,000 pesos every month and I save 100,000 pesos in the lease, but the bank can lend me 110,000. What would you prefer? Save 100,000 or get a loan of 110,000?
100,000.
110. It's the same amount of money that you will spend, and you get a larger amount of money at the beginning. That's why what we compare is the amount of money that at the beginning, in the immediate period, I can save in the lease. In period zero, in the immediate period, the cash flow of the lease is always positive. Why? Because in the incremental cash flow, what do? I subtract the buy option from the lease option, remember?
Yes.
So in the lease option, I will have just the lease payment. And in the buy option, I will have the cost of the asset. So this amount will always be greater than this one. As a result, the initial cash flow of the lease is always, the initial net cash flow or incremental cash flow will always be positive. And that is the amount of money I am saving because I lease instead of buy. Is that clear? Does it make sense?
Mhm.
So let's assume we have an asset that has this cash flow in the lease payment. So the incremental cash flows of this lease agreement are 55,718 in the moment. And then payments, which are approximately $14,100 every year, okay? So if instead of paying negative, okay, if instead of paying this amount of money to the lessor, I asked for a loan to the bank and told them, I can pay you $14,000 every month, every year. How much money can you lend me? How much money can you lend me is the answer to the equivalent loan. If the equivalent loan is greater than the initial cash flow, the initial incremental cash flow of the lease, then I should lease. But if it's lower, I should buy. Okay? If the equivalent loan is greater than the cash flow of the lease, I should buy on credit. If the if the equivalent loan is lower than the initial cash flow of the lease agreement, I should lease. Okay, so whichever is greater, that's the option I should take. Make sense?
Yes.
Now the question is, how do I estimate the equivalent loan? So how do I come up with these $50,530? I don't know if you can see. Here's the definition. Oh, not the definition, but that's the calculation. The equivalent loan is going to be the absolute value of the present value of the lease incremental cash flow, excluding year zero. So the cash flows which are highlighted in green, okay? Those are the cash flows, the incremental cash flows of the lease, excluding the initial one. Excluding this cash flow, I calculate the present value of all the remaining cash flows, it will be negative because they are all negative, you see? That's why I need the absolute value. So what is the discount rate? The discount rate is the after-tax cost of debt, because I am displacing debt. If I don't ask for a loan, I will be listed. So the rule stays. In this case, the cost of debt, the before cost of debt was 7%. The after-tax cost of debt, considering a 32% corporate tax rate, was 4.76. If you discount 14,102, 14,146, etc., at this discount rate, you get this 50,530. Yes.
So at the end of the day, it doesn't have anything to do with the bank or the interest rate the bank can offer me. It's just using the same like amortization table of the payments of the loan, well, of the lease. I calculate the equivalent loan.
It's just that this cost of debt, it is the interest rate that I will get from the bank. Yeah, in this case, this cost of debt is for the loan. Okay. So in that
The one
sense,
that I use for the
yes, it has to do with the bank, because the bank will decide what is the interest rate they will charge, and that rate after tax is the discount rate for the equivalent loan. Okay. Maybe we should have another box here, because we have different discount rates for different purposes. So what is the discount rate for criteria number 4, for example? Do you remember? For the present value of the lease payments for VAS criterion number 4, what is the appropriate discount rate? Do you remember? Well, yes, but just to be sure that we mean the same thing, is the before tax. Because what you said may be this, but not necessarily, but it is the before tax cost of debt for the firm, right? So if the firm only finances with bank loan, yes, the before tax cost of debt will be the interest rates from the bank. What is the discount rate we should use for the net present value of the lease or the incremental net present value?
Depends what.
WACC, and then we have to refer to this box, okay? And what is the appropriate discount rate for the equivalent loan? Okay. If you make a summary, probably it's easier to remember. Right? If you put it as they say in English, if you put it in black and white, if you write it, the probability that you remember it is greater. There are some people who remember better by listening, others who remember better by writing. But the truth is that the more senses we use, no matter what is our ability, the probability that we lose, I don't know, it's because it moves. Sorry about it. I thought I had changed that, but I didn't. Okay, so that's the equivalent loan, okay? And then we compare the equivalent loan to the initial incremental cash flow of the lease. Okay, and it's the incremental cash flow is zero. Okay, that's the initial cash flow for the lease. If the equivalent loan is greater than the incremental cash flow of year 0, then we should buy on credit. If it's lower, then we should lease. Okay? How do we prove that? This is an amortization table for the equivalent loan to prove that in fact this number is the amount of money that we can borrow and pay at this interest rate in the period that we are using and with this amount of money. So what do? The initial balance of the equivalent loan is 50,513. Okay? The interest rate, the interest payment is going to be 7%, not this one, because we don't pay the after-tax cost of debt. We pay the before-tax cost of debt. Do you agree on that?
Yes.
So I go to the bank and the bank charged me 7%. This is the adjustment we make because we know we can deduct interest from taxes, but we have to pay 7%. Okay. So 7%, if you will help me, 7% out of the 50,513 should yield 3,535. Is that correct? Double check this. Is it right?
Yes.
Okay. Oh. Okay,
Yes.
now. Interest can be deducted from taxes. So 32% of the interest payment should be the tax shield. Is that correct?
Yes.
32% of 3,500 is 1,100. Negative, the payment of the interest. Positive,
Good touch.
the tax shield, because it is a saving in taxes. Okay. Now, if the total payment I'm going to make to the bank is this 14,102 because I said the same amount of money I would pay the lessor, I will pay the bank. Remember? So 3,500 with a saving of 1,100 accounts for the 14,000. The difference, 11,697 is the amount of money I can pay for the principal and deducting the initial balance of my loan. Because I will pay the bank, look at this number, I will pay the bank exactly the same amount of money I would pay the lessor. It's just that for the bank, I have to pay interest, I will have a saving, and the rest will be a payment for a down payment for the principal. Okay? So period number 2 starts with this new balance. 32%, 7% of this amount of money is the interest, 30% of interest is the saving. The difference towards the 14,146 is the down payment for the principal. 38 minus the principal, the new balance. And so on and so forth. So I can prove that by asking for a loan of $50,513, which is my equivalent loan, and using the same amount of money I would pay in the lease, I can repay a bank loan. Okay? This table is just a proof of the equivalent loan. Doesn't need to be done. It's just for my own mental tranquility. Okay? All right? Questions?
Teacher, I
Yes.
am confused because in the mental map, we put an equivalent loan, you say after tax. The cost of debt, but in this case, we use the before tax cost of debt for the interest.
Okay. In order to calculate the equivalent loan, so this 50,000 is the present value of these 4 cash flows. The discount rate to get the present value of these 4 is 4.76, which is the after tax. For the amortization table, we use the before tax. If you combine these 2 lines, this is the after tax interest rate, in fact. Okay? If you combine these 2 lines, we are still using the after tax cost of debt. Is that clear? All right.
The maturity of equivalent loan is the same of maturity of this.
Of the lease agreement. Yes, exactly.
So in this case, for payers is
4 years?
Is the period of time that I pay these payments.
The loan, yes. The maturity of the bank loan is 4 years. The maturity of the lease agreement will be 5 because I start in 0, right?
Yes.
Is that clear? In this 50,000, I have this payment, which is netted. I don't see it, but it's there. These payments are payments in advance. So I have 5 payments for the lease, which is a 5-year term for the lease. But that is equivalent to a 4-year loan. Because loans are paid in arrears. Is that clear what I'm saying? What is important is that once you have your incremental cash flow, you ignore the first one and use the rest from whatever you have left. All right? Yes.
So we have to discount the, for example, the last payment for 5 years.
No, 4. You discount this by 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. If you use cash flows in arrears, you use 4 years. It's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th payment in advance. It's the 4th cash flow in arrears. Okay? Make sense? Any other question? Okay, now you will help me estimate the equivalent loan for the photocopier exercise. Okay? You tell me what I need to do. Just give me a second to open the file. Oh, by the way, I made a change. Page here. Remember that in Excel, when you use the net present value equation, the first cash flow that you introduce to the function refers to year 1 or period 1. And the 0 has to be added at the end, outside the function. I had everything in the inside the function, so the present value was wrong.
For present value of this,
For any. For the buy option or for the incremental.
in arrears or in advance?
No, but this is not because it is in advance or in arrears. This is just the way Excel works. If I use this equation, net present value, this, which is the first cash flow, is always assumed to be cash flow in period number 1. But I have cash flows in period 0. In this exercise, and for any lease agreement, and for this exercise as well, I have cash flows in year 0. Yes, so I should start for the Excel function. I should start in month 1. And when I estimate the present value of all the cash flows from month 1 to 36, outside the function, I have to add the cash flow in year 0. Okay, and I had that wrong in my equation. So instead of the 2,732, in case you have taken notes of that, it would be 2,744. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to compare buy on credit and lease. What do I need to do to estimate for this exercise? the equivalent loan. Tell me what I have to do and I will do it in Excel. And on Friday, you will do it on your own. The equivalent loan for the lead. So what do I need?
That person value of the cash flows or the payments of months.
Okay. So let me copy the number of the period. I have 36 periods, well, 37 including the 0. So do I need
Incremental cash flow.
incremental cash flows? Incremental cash flows. So let me go and find it. Incremental cash flows here. Okay. So you see the interpretations? The interpretation of the incremental cash flow is what I save and what I have to pay in excess from the list. So if I compare the lease versus the buy option, I can save $3,385 because I don't have to buy the assets. But in exchange for this saving, the rest of the months, I have to pay $103 more in the lease than in the buy option. Okay, so I save at the beginning, but I have to pay a higher, or I have to disburse more money in the future. Okay, so what I'm asking in the net present value is the value of the cash flows in excess greater or lower than the saving? That's what I'm asking, you see?
Did you repeat that?
Yes. When I calculate the incremental net cash flow, incremental net present value, I'm trying to assess if the value of the cash flows in excess of the lease, which are always there, is greater or lower than the value of the initial savings in the lease. If the cost is greater than the savings, I should buy. If the cost is lower than the saving, I should lease. And that's why lease 0. Is it?
Mhm.
Makes sense, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so I have this vector with the incremental cash flows. How do I go from there to the equivalent loan? What do I do? The net present value of what did you say?
Of the incremental cash flows.
All of them? All of them?
No, without the first period.
Without the 0, right?
Yes.
Okay. Net present value. Value of incremental cash flows, excluding period 0. Okay? Mhm. What is the discount rate I should use? Remember that the interest rate for this case was 8.5% per year.
The after tax rate.
So this is the annual, this is the monthly, and this is the after-tax monthly. Do you agree?
Yes.
So I have the after-tax interest rate. And then I will discount all the cash flows, incremental cash flows, except for the 0. Okay?
Yes.
And according to the definition I showed you, I should take the absolute value of that figure because it's going to be negative, right?
Yes.
So the absolute value. Okay. So this net present value of the incremental cash flows excluding year 0 is called the equivalent loan. Okay. What do I do with that number? What do I do with that number?
I should compare it with the
Present value
value of the
incremental cash flow.
The incremental net cash flow of year 0, which is, let me tell you, 3,385. What should I do?
get the loan.
Does everyone agree? If I use the photocopier, I get a saving immediately at the beginning of the lease agreement of $3,385. If using the same amount of money every month, I'm paying the bank a loan, a credit, I will get $3,700. I can buy the photocopier and have $267 left.
Vacation.
What do I do?
Get loan.
Do you remember what we concluded on Monday? What should we do? Buy on credit, remember?
Yes.
Regardless of the approach you follow to value the lease agreement, the decision should be the same. If it is not the same, it's because we are doing something wrong.
Oh.
Okay, in the math. The numbers we get are slightly different because the interpretation is different. Okay, but in the end, we are doing exactly the same thing. Okay, what is the difference between these two? Can you make the number for me? What is the difference between the equivalent loan and the initial cash flow of the lease, the initial incremental cash flow of the lease? How much money is that?
$382.89.
Incremental net present value is 382.89. It's exactly the same calculation. We just look at it from different perspectives. Okay? That's why the two approaches are equivalent. It depends how we want to transmit the information. We have styles, we have preferences. You know that, right? So some people prefer equivalent loans, some people prefer net present value. The same way people prefer blue cars, red cars. I don't know, it's just the same. Questions or comments?
Teacher, when you buy on credit, you ask for the, if I don't know, you have the target that you pay every month.
You mean in the equivalent loan or where do you mean?
My doubt is about the difference for asking for a loan and for buying on credit in reality.
It's the same, the same. You have to ask for the loan to buy on credit. It's the same.
Okay.
It's just that we compare lease versus buy. In order to buy, you have to ask for the loan so that you can buy on credit. Yes? Mhm. Sometimes you don't get the money. Sometimes you don't see the money. You just see the asset because someone else will do the purchase on your behalf so that you use the money appropriately. Because the risk is that if the bank gives you the money, maybe you don't buy the asset you were supposed to buy. So many of the times we don't see the money, we don't see really the loan, we just see the asset, we just receive it. But behind that, underneath, there is a credit agreement, a credit contract. Yes?
At the end of the day, I need to, for the valuation approach, I need to do the net present value first. So,
Yes, there's no way out.
so the equivalent loan in practice, it's only helpful to know.
It's only helpful for your audience because probably some entrepreneurs, for example, will understand better. If you lease, you save $5,000, but if you ask for the loan, the bank will give you $6,000. So for your audience, may be easier to understand that comparison. For your audience that probably is not very familiar with technical, terminology. But it's the same. Mathematically, it's exactly the same. Yes.
There are any reason of the bank may give me money after tax or something?
No, because the bank has nothing to do with your taxes. No, they will just charge for the service of giving you money.
So as for a loan is a risky decision.
For the bank, yes, and for you, yes.
The bank may decide different discount.
Yeah, depending on the client, of course, depending on the client, depending on the company, the interest rate is different. It's like in the credit cards. If you look at the bank statements of different people, you will see that the interest rate for the same credit card is different because it depends on your behavior as consumer and payer, of course. It's the same for the banks. They may charge 8.5% for a company and 11.6 and 7.95 for other. Yeah, because that depends on your credit quality as customer. Right? I don't know. Did I answer your question? Yes. Anything else? No?
Pero ¿qué tendría que hacer yo? ¿Cómo tendría que comportarme como una empresa para que la tasa fuera igual a la que yo estoy pidiendo? O a mí.
Bueno, nada más acuérdate. Realmente en la práctica yo no voy a pedir la tasa. Yo voy a pedir el crédito. El banco va a analizarme. Normalmente uno llega, llena un montón de papeles, hay que entregar un montón de copias de un montón de cosas, y luego el banco te dice, lo voy a mandar a mi división de análisis. Lo cual es cierto, tienen, en las sucursales está la gente operativa, que básicamente lo único que hace es seguir protocolos. Ellos no toman decisiones en realidad. Todo se manda a la parte que se llama back office, que es donde está el análisis de la institución. Entonces ya tienen unos modelos ya preestablecidos, modelos que se llaman Z-Score o Credit Score, donde toda la información que uno les proporciona en esos documentos, la meten en sus algoritmos, y entonces el programita da un resultado que dice, para este cliente cae en un rango de este riesgo. Para ese rango de riesgo, el banco ya tiene preasignados tasas de interés, rangos de tasas de interés. Entonces, según tu riesgo, vas a caer en una tasa de interés. Si tienes historial con el banco, entonces dentro de ese rango, pues a lo mejor, y si te has comportado bien, entonces dentro de ese rango, a lo mejor vas a estar dentro del rango inferior de ese bucket, ¿no? Entonces, uno no llega y le dice, quiero que me prestes al 5%, ¿verdad? Eso sería fantástico. Realmente es al otro lado. Aquí está mi garantía, porque el banco se va a quedar con, o sea, el banco se va a quedar con la garantía del activo. Mientras ustedes no paguen, la factura dice, si la sacan a su nombre, va a tener un gravamen que dice, pues, esto es propiedad del banco. Entonces, el banco, y luego eso es lo que hace mucha gente, bueno, más bien, eso es lo que no hace la gente. Cuando terminan de pagar el crédito, tienen que ir al banco. No saben la cantidad de personas que he oído cada vez que voy al banco batallar con esto. Tienes que ir al banco y tienes que solicitar una carta de terminación de crédito. Tienes que solicitar el comprobante de que ya terminaste de pagar. Porque si no tienes esa carta, es como si no hubieras terminado de pagar. Entonces te mueres y le dejas a tu familia una casa que no es de ellos. Es un broncón, ¿no? Es un problemón. Entonces, terminas de pagar cualquier tipo de crédito y el banco les tiene que expedir una carta de cumplimiento de ese crédito, donde dice que efectivamente ustedes ya pagaron y que está liquidado. Y luego hay que solicitar la eliminación del gravamen en la escritura o en la factura, porque si no, ahí va a estar todavía. Y el día que ustedes quieran vender esa casa, heredan esa casa, o lo que quieran hacer con esa casa, ahí va a estar ese gravamen. Entonces, aviéntense ir al cuarto para las 3, al registro público del comercio para que les quiten el gravamen, pues no, claro que no les van a hacer caso. No.
En ese caso, si la persona se muere y le deja la casa a alguien más y no tiene que la carta, la tiene que volver a pagar.
No tiene que volver a pagar, tiene que hacer un juicio para tratar de conseguir, porque tiene que conseguir los comprobantes. O sea, si no conservaron los comprobantes de que estuvieron pagando, evidentemente la institución debe de tenerlos. Entonces tienes que hacer el juicio para solicitar, para que la autoridad le solicite a la institución que suelte esa información para que se compruebe que ya pagas. Sí se puede, pero pasan meses y meses y meses, y si nos va bien, ¿verdad? Porque pueden pasar años. Entonces, sí, todas estas cosas son fastidiosísimas hasta acá, pero hay que hacerlas. Hay que hacerlas. Porque entonces lo único que uno hace es heredar problemas. Pues mejor no me heredes nada, ¿no?
Sí.
Soy una bronca, no me heredes nada. O sea, si estoy bien como estoy, ¿no? La verdad, sí. No, es que bueno que ustedes vienen a la escuela, que bueno que ustedes preguntan, que bueno que ustedes aprenden. Porque créanme que, o sea, lo general es que la gente no sepa de lo que, o sea, lo que nosotros estamos ahorita platicando, no lo sabe la gente allá afuera. ¿Se imaginan? todo el valor agregado que se pierde porque no hay un papel que dice que ya terminé de pagar. Y estuve 30 años pagando y nomás por ese papel. Y llovió y se mojó mi casa y se mojó la caja donde tenía los comprobantes. Y pasa. Y es una cosa fastidiosísima. Y normalmente uno quiere hacerse de la propiedad. ¿Cuándo? Cuando necesita dinero. ¿Ah? Pues necesito el dinero, tengo que vender la casa que me heredó mi tío Fabricio, ¿no? Pero pues no tengo los papeles, ¿cómo la vendo? ¿Verdad? Pues, sin problema, sin problema. Entonces, aprovechen ustedes la oportunidad que ustedes tienen de aprender. De aprender y de preguntar, ¿verdad? Porque luego vienen y están ahí en el celular ni pelan la clase. Pues esto que les estoy diciendo cuesta mucho allá afuera. El día que ustedes quieran preguntarle esto a alguien allá afuera, les va a cobrar. No se lo va a decir de gratis.
Eso no parece una venta, también cuando uno termina de pagar.
También, hay que pedirles la carta.
También.
También. Es igual, no importa el tipo de crédito, no importa el tipo de crédito, no importa la institución, tienen que solicitar esa carta. Si fue un crédito a través de la empresa, igual, es lo mismo. Fabuloso este país, se me revuelven las palabras.
Pero ahí es así en todos lados o nada más México.
Nosotros porque tenemos una burocracia muy complicada. En todos los lados es igual, o sea, normalmente el proceso es muy similar en todas partes. La diferencia es la burocracia. Yo he platicado, yo creo esto infinidad de veces ya, pero es que son cosas que a uno lo marcan. Cuando yo me fui a estudiar a Inglaterra y yo llegué, yo necesitaba una cuenta bancaria para que el CONACYT me transfiriera la beca, ¿no? Entonces yo sabía, viviendo aquí, abrir una cuenta bancaria, bueno, está bueno. Pues llegué al banco, les di mi pasaporte, creo que les di la carta de la universidad donde estaba aceptada. Una señora fue, ¿no? 5 minutos, y me dio mi chequera así en físico. Yo no lo podía creer. Yo dije, no, a ver, aquí hay un error. Algo está mal, ¿qué falta? Voy a tener que venir mañana, ¿verdad? No, ya está aquí. Pero algo va a faltar, ¿verdad? O sea, no la puedo usar, sí, ya la puedo usar. O sea, pero todavía no me pueden transferir, ¿verdad? No, sí, ya. O sea, y les estoy hablando hace más de 20 años.
Doctora, no es por el riesgo que haya aquí en corporaciones allá. Tienen que cerciorarse que.
Pero ¿cuál riesgo? O sea, ya pagué. Ya pagué. Lo único que necesito es que me des mi carta de que ya pagué, pero te hacen sufrir y sufrir y sufrir. Para empezar, no te dicen. Que tienes que asegurarte. Es más, ¿por qué tendría yo que ir a pedírselo? Pónganse en la cosa. Ya terminé de pagarte. Dame mi carta, no, tú sabes que yo la necesito. Tú sabes que la única que lo puedes pedir eres tu institución. O sea, ¿por qué no me la das? ¿No? O sea, porque tengo que pedir, y si no te la pido, no me la vas a dar. Y luego cuando te la pida, pero me trae otra vez los comprobantes de pago, pues si, que no estuve cada vez viniendo aquí. Y así es, o sea, y tienes que volverles a llevar el papel que ellos mismos ya sellaron, ¿verdad?
El sistema.
Entonces, yo no creo que sea porque los mexicanos somos más desobligados que en otras partes, ¿eh? O sea, sí es cierto que es. Pero no me vas a expedir un documento por algo que no te da. No vas a, o sea, no te voy a quedar a deber nada. ¿Sí me explico? Entonces, ¿cuál es el riesgo? No hay ningún riesgo. El riesgo es, pues, que si me das ese papel, entonces ya no me tienes aquí atado de manos, ¿verdad? Y no tengo que estar viniendo. Entonces voy a ver si te vendo tu crédito en lo que vienes y te digo, venga la próxima semana porque todavía no está firmado, ¿verdad? Pero déjame le digo que tiene preaprobado, ¿sí? ¿No les toca eso?
Sí, sí.
Entonces ahí te tiene, o sea, diciéndote un montón de tonterías que tú no te interesa, pero nada más para decirte que pues todavía no está tu carta, que vuelves a regresar y luego la próxima semana que regresas te vuelven a tratar de vender algún seguro para tu casa, ¿verdad? Y la mascota y no sé qué. Así como, ¿y mi carta? Y así te la paso, y así te la paso. Entonces, pues, ¿es nuestra idiosincrasia? Sí. ¿Es nuestro estilo? Sí.
¿Por qué en otros países no se da? ¿Será cuestión de restricciones?
Yo creo que sí es cultura. Yo creo que sí es parte de la cultura. O sea, ¿por qué voy a estar perdiendo mi tiempo? ¿Por qué le hago? O sea, hacerle perder el tiempo a Elizabeth es perder mi tiempo yo también. ¿Estamos de acuerdo?
Sí.
Entonces, ¿para qué lo voy a perder? Yo creo que es cultural, honestamente. Es cultural.
O sea,
Valoran más su tiempo, a lo mejor.
lo que hacen esos tipos de trámites a veces son empresas que no son de aquí, ¿no? Porque la misma empresa que está aquí o el mismo que está aquí y en otra parte
Aquí sí me hacen perder el tiempo y allá.
Ah, que la misma institución, o sea, si te iban a mesa aquí no jala y allá sí jala.
Ajá.
Yo digo, por eso insisto, esto es algo cultural, ¿no? Esto es algo cultural. Porque bien podría, como usted dice, bien podría la matriz extranjera, obligarlos, ¿no? Si no se puede de otra manera, obligarlos a hacer las cosas como deben de ser, ¿no? Pero luego lo que sucede es que las empresas o las instituciones que se constituyen en México de empresas extranjeras son empresas mexicanas. Es decir, Citibanamex tiene que hacer otra empresa que no es Citigroup, que era, o bueno, que sigue siendo Banamex. SASB es una empresa constituida en México cuyos accionistas son mexicanos. Y con las limitaciones que la ley permite para la inversión extranjera, ¿no? O permitía que se han ido cambiando. Entonces, al final seguimos teniendo, aunque el nombre me dice que es no sé, BBVA, y que es Citigroup, y que es HSBC, en realidad yo lo que tengo es una empresa constituida por mexicanos en México, que tienen la concesión para utilizar el nombre de una empresa extranjera. Por eso es una subsidiaria, o es una sucursal. No es la empresa, ¿cómo se dice? Parent company. La empresa matriz. Entonces, pues muchas veces eso sucede. Entonces, yo estoy utilizando el nombre, tal vez muchos de sus procesos, pero por ejemplo, ya casi no existe, pero no sé si ustedes ubican Sears, hay Sears en México y Sears en Estados Unidos. Walmart en México. Cuando ustedes quieren hacer una transacción en uno de esos, no te valen allá. Las tarjetas de aquí no valen allá. Si fuera la misma empresa, tendrían que valer, pero no, ¿verdad? La de Sears nomás jalaba aquí, la de Walmart nomás jala aquí. ¿Por qué? Porque legalmente son personas morales distintas. Y entonces eso hace que desde que se constituye por personas que viven en otra cultura, pues ahí también ya empezó el problema. Pues sí, ¿no? Pero pues es la manera en la que se pueden constituir en México. Para constituirse en México, tengo que hacer una empresa aquí, no me dejan que la de allá jale aquí. Tengo que hacer una desde cero aquí. Entonces, pues desde que la constituyo imagínense, yo me acuerdo mucho cuando trabajaba para los de HIV, cómo batallaban y cómo sufrían y cómo se quejaban, que sean para poder conseguir cualquier permiso, es que tengo que dar moches. Entonces ellos decían, o sea, ¿por qué tengo que dar moches? O sea, sí, al principio, ya después era como, sí, autorizan el cheque. O sea, pues es triste lo que digo, ¿no? Pero así es. O sea, porque me acuerdo que decían, es que es la única manera de poder que el negocio pues camine, ¿verdad? Dar moches. Entonces, pues, como que nuestra forma de hacer todo es tan inflexible que todos terminamos cediendo porque si no, no puedes hacer nada, ¿verdad? O te vas del país. Es una opción, ¿verdad? Que ustedes van a tener, por ejemplo. Pero ojalá regresen y que pues ayuden, porque si no, pues, si todos nos vamos, pues entonces, ¿qué va a pasar? ¿Verdad? ¿A dónde vamos a parar? Venezuela, Bolivia. ¿Sí me explico? O sea, pues, porque la parte fácil, la salida fácil es esa. Me voy, tu bronca, la mía ya no, yo estudié inglés, yo me voy, a ver cómo le hace, ¿verdad? Pero pues no se trata de eso, ¿no? O sea, tampoco, ¿verdad? No se trata de eso. Porque, bueno, creo yo. Pero vea quién toma sus decisiones. Entonces, preguntas. Y ahora nos quedan derivados. Entonces, vamos a hacer el viernes vamos a la multimedia. Vamos a hacer este ejercicio, ustedes lo van a hacer from scratch. Van a hacer la amortization table, van a hacer interest rate, y luego van a hacer la evaluación y luego van a hacer el equivalente. ¿Ok? El examen es el lunes. El examen dijimos nada más es cost of capital y dividendos. Aquí a la hora de la clase. Sí. ¿Okay? Sí, van a venir viernes también.
Esa era la manera. O sea,
¿El ejercicio para practicar o el final print?
No,
El dividendo.
Sí, no es un ejercicio, es un resumen de la función 3 de Miller inmobiliaria. Nada más que les puse ahí que por lo menos contenga A, B y C. Pero si es un resumen, pueden hacer esto, por ejemplo. Más que allá sí necesitan una ecuación, buenas ecuaciones. Sería más difícil hacer esto que el resumen. Pero si es el resumen, que como forma parte del tema de dividendos, pues sí viene para la. Es pura teoría, ¿eh? Eso sí es pura teoría. ¿Entendemos? Hablamos el viernes. Gracias. Pues, hay algo que vale 2 millones. Que no viene. Aquí te falta. Ese número de. Estaba aquí.
Que prueba la relevancia de los dividendos. Es un poco eso. Espera que nosotros escribamos.
Sí.
Escribamos otro.
Sí, o sea, que no llegan ahí. O sea, sí la van a aceptar, no la van a hacer. Más que no sea que no sea foto.
Lo que yo pensaba era como que buscáramos explicarlo de otra manera. Entonces, algo parecido.
Es que vimos en las proposiciones.
Sí, o sea, como que había que ver qué parte de ahí. O sea, no es totalmente parte de ellos.
Digo, si quiere hablarse de otro momento, pero es más diferente.
Sí. Ah, ok.
Sino lo único que yo no quería era que sacar la foto y
Ah, ok.
para pues no la ni cuenta semana.
Bueno, y en el último también que hice el ejercicio.
Ahí mismo viene el.
Ah, ok. Ah, bueno.
Sí, ahí mismo. Básicamente lo que quiero es que lo que está ahí lo resuma, pero que ustedes lo hagan para que a la hora que lo estén haciendo es como que lo estuvieran leyendo.
Básicamente que leamos.
Que lo lean, exacto.
Ok, gracias.
Yo te quería preguntar, oye, he dicho que ustedes es una cosa para los dividendos. Le queda una cosa, es como saber más diferencial de Estados Unidos y la inversión.
¿Usted fue el que me pidió una plaza?
No, pero de hecho esto venía. O sea, es que le quería preguntar más que nada porque de todas las plazas, la verdad es que hay muchas que no. Y eso bien
Las 12 del sí.
Sí, no, todas las del 100, no.
Pero ¿por qué si se supone que tengo un chorro de cosas bien interesantes?
Es que te explotan.
Están muertos.
Sí, tienen de que, si son 4 horas diarias, que los tienen más y que están mandando
Pues no se debería de tener.
por eso todos dan de que por ciano, así que pues, cosas fáciles. Entonces vi ese nombre en una de esas.
Es que sabes que abrí 3 plazas porque 3 personas me pidieron que si querían hacer servicio
sí.
conmigo. Y según yo, es Juan Manuel, Axel, y según yo el tercero es Aldo. El tercero es el que no estoy muy seguro. Por eso le pregunté, ¿sabes qué?
No, fui yo, o sea, de hecho, como se abrieron apenas hoy y las vi apenas, y dije, bueno, sí.
Solo que alguien no la quiere agarrar, pues háganlo usted. ¿No?
Bueno.
A lo mejor Juan no la quiere porque abrieron una consumulación.
¿A poco?
¿En serio?
Para hacer los análisis.
Sí.
Y ayer le dije a Juan y Juan sí quería.
Es que hay muchos también de Congreso del Estado, Secretaría tal.
Es que viene la época de los presupuestos.
Sí, no te lo recomiendo.
No.
Pero bueno, eso que es algo similar al CIE, ¿no? O sea, si de aquí los explotan, allá.
Quiero imaginar.
Porque aparte de una casa, pues aquí están, pero allá hay que ir al Congreso, ¿no?
No, está más pesado.
Pues está padre si respetaran los horarios. Sí, porque es lo que deberían de. En 4 horas, pues lo van a tener que hacer aquí en algún otro lugar. Pero si de 4 se van a 8, pues.
Sí, no, los tenían bien. Bueno, por lo menos los que han, lo que fue, por ejemplo, Rubén, chavo de barrio, sí, que también tomó por foto. Él estaba ahí en el CIE, y varias personas, no solo él, pero con el que mandó al lado. Dice, si son 4 horas, dice, de repente me dicen, oye, alárgate otras 2 mañana, y mañana te las acorto, en lugar de 4 2. Dice, no, ¿cuál?
trabajaba 6 y al día siguiente trabajaba otros 5 y luego al día siguiente trabajaba 4 y
Pero no terminó antes tampoco.
no, o sea, no,
Sí.
él decía, lo seguía.
Porque bueno, si trabajas más, pues a lo mejor terminas antes.
Pues quién sabe.
Oh.
Pero pues como se
Bueno, pues a lo mejor pueden, no sé, preguntarse entre ustedes y si alguno de ellos ya no quiere la plaza, pues
bueno, perfecto.
vamos a hacer unos libros de
Chismosa.
¿Mande?
Yo no vas por chismosa.
Muchas gracias, doctora.